Okay, it is Tuesday, March 12th, 2019, and it is 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. And this is week 6, the final lecture for this quarter in this course. This quarter has gone very, very, very fast. As I shared with you week 1 during the open house, that the quarter would go very, very, very fast. I hope that each of you have learned quite a bit about the issues that we are facing with in terms of drugs and the relationship between drugs and crime, and recognizing that there is a correlation between crime that's committed and the use of drugs. I also hope that you also are aware of the fact that people oftentimes who are charged with crimes are not bad people, but are really more sick people, and that you have learned that those individuals need treatment to help them to recover from the abuse and use of drugs, and that if there is adequate treatment provided for individuals, it will save their lives, it will save many families, and it will save the lives of others. And then, of course, it will cause the recidivism rate to go down, and you won't see as many repeat offenders. So you learn that here. And then the third thing that you learn is that people can find themselves innocently by starting out with simple painkillers and finding themselves addicted to those painkillers and graduating to heroin, resulting in an opioid crisis that we face. I have shared with you numerous resources. I provided you with the way that the law enforcement is approaching this issue with the deflection issue, such as the Illinois Statute 30, Senate Bill 3023, and also indicating that law enforcement is beginning to move in the direction to recognize there's not enough jails to put these people away and to have them continue to receive some help. Even if they're in possession of paraphernalia or drugs, they can turn those in and not be charged with a crime, but then be treated. And then those individuals will have a chance to live a successful life and be productive citizens. You saw the devastating aspects of how individuals, once they find themselves caught in the use of heroin and synthetic drugs and other types of street drugs, that can result in serious mental issues that come about, as well as the death of many individuals at an early age. You recall me sharing with you the story of the young man who came to me with this book right here, From Dope to Hope, Tim Ryan, and I shared the experience about that, as well as the Chasing the Dragon video that you saw. That was extensive application of how we should see how serious this issue is, and that it is an epidemic proportion. And since many of you are heading in the criminal justice field, you should always be cognizant that you're facing these kinds of issues. You know, people who are law enforcement particularly will find themselves answering calls that are from individuals who are out of their mind. They're hyped up on some kind of drug, and they may not intend on hurting anybody, even their emotions or movements, but they are not thinking at the time. And so as professionals, we need to be able to receive more treatment to dealing with individuals who are high in mental health. And then the Narcan, being able to provide the administration of the drug to arrest individuals and possibly save lives. So we have a lot of work headed out in front of us. The thing that really concerns me most about this is the budgetary constraints that are in place to help individuals to live a productive life. So having said all of that, those are some of the things that we covered this quarter. You should be more enlightened as you were before, and never forget the experiences that you saw that many individuals have gone through in life after using these drugs. So now let's get into the content of this week, this week 6 module. Of course, you know all this information here, so I'm just going to scroll all the way down to the live recording, reminding you that all the recordings are included here, and you can save those recordings even after you leave this course. And then finally, let's look at the the announcements for this week. The final announcement is that we're going to deal with criminal activity, and we've been talking about that intermittently with the other topics dealing with law enforcement, and so we're going to conclude by talking a little bit more about that. Treatment and rehabilitation strategies, which we've also been covering throughout the quarter. So I sent you the PowerPoints for Chapter 10 of Drugs, Crimes, and Justice, and you should read that chapter or have read that chapter, and then deal with the activities that we're going to cover a little bit about treatment challenges related to opioid addiction and drug treatment and rehab programs, few of those. And then be sure that you complete by tonight, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, your initial discussion post relating to methadone clinics, and make sure that you submit your reply post by Friday the 15th, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, as the quarter officially ends. Do not come back and say, I did not know the quarter end, I thought it ended Sunday the 17th, which that is not true. It is Friday the 15th. It's all over the place. I've been saying it since the beginning of the quarter, and all assignments must be in. I already indicated that I'm only accepting assignments 4, 5, and 6, 1, 2, and 3, unless I made prior arrangements, and I think all the people that I made those arrangements with have satisfied those. So basically 4, 5, and 6. Not the discussion posts for 4 and 5. You cannot submit those if you have not already submitted them. So reminding you that there is a final exam which is timed, and you know the final exam covers the subjects that we've covered in this course, the PowerPoints, the lectures, and so you need to have that final exam, which is timed, because of the fact that you've had practice quizzes throughout the quarter, and to help you get ready for this exam. Friday the 15th, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, the final grade will be entered. So if you're still working on it and it's after 12, then and it hasn't been submitted, it's going to end up with a 0 for the final exam, and you don't want that. So again, bold print, more than once. The quarter ends this Friday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then if you could take time to complete the end quarter student evaluations. I'd appreciate those comments about what you thought about the course, what you learned here, and whether you enjoyed the course and what you enjoyed from the course. And if you want to add some comments that would be more beneficial, we welcome those as well. Okay, and then you know why my motto is adversity to springboard to success. We covered that earlier. So now let's go over to the course calendar real quick, and you will see exactly what I just said. Here we are right here. Your initial post due tonight, your reply post, and your final exam are due on Friday. Quarter ends, again, is also on here, letting you know that that is it. You can't go to the 16th or the 17th. Very, very, very important. So this week, your discussion post and then your final exam. So you need to prepare for that, and I recommend taking that Friday or Thursday, okay, so that you can make sure that you are prepared for that. Any questions? Feel free to reach out to me concerning that issue. All right, let's get to the module. So again, I remind you that we have this Drugs and Crimes course guide, which we've been promoting the whole quarter to help you with your assignments. So let's take a look again back at the assignments, your discussion posts, and your final exam. And it'll consist of multiple choice questions. And it's an hour-long exam. So do everything, do the best, okay? All right. And then your live lecture keyword that I'm going to give you today, then you'll be able to provide that. And those are the assignments for the week. So if you'll notice, there is no rubric for week 6 because there's no written assignment for week 6. All right? So now let's go back. And let's get into the lesson content. Okay, so we're going to talk about treatment challenges related to opioid addiction, drug treatment. We're going to talk about rehab programs, and then we're going to adjourn. All right. So let's talk about this. We're not going to go into this very much, but we are going to go into, again, recognizing, as you already know, it's a real epidemic. That's the word that we use. And you now know how people have abused opioids and how they can easily become addicted. Their lives are turned topsy-turvy, and even good people can end up being destroyed. The families are there. Sometimes these individuals are ostracized by members of their family. People don't want them around them for reasons, sometimes because of the fact that it promotes theft and robbery and property crimes of that nature. And so there's a lot of physical damage that takes place and the psychological damage that comes about because the mind is altered by these drugs. And some of the physical traits that we see deal with the restlessness of the individual. They suffer from muscle and bone pain, the insomnia, diarrhea, vomiting, cold flashes, and sweating. And you know, it's very interesting that these drugs can cause these things to happen in individuals, and that's how they live their lives. And as I said again, prescription drugs, and methadone can lessen the symptoms of withdrawal these individuals have. However, methadone is also addictive in itself, and it is something that a person ends up taking for the rest of their life unless they're weaned off of this. And there are methadone clinics in many, many, many cities, but again, we had a discussion about the pros and cons of methadone. And it says here in our little piece here that methadone is also detected in opioid, is also detected on drug tests. So that if a person is using methadone, they go take a drug test, it's going to trigger that they're using a drug. And so you won't be able to get hired for a job. So it's kind of a catch-22 situation. Another argument against methadone is that it just basically is like a stay of execution, and it is probably not going to get you very far with it. The best method and the hardest part is going through recovery and abstaining. Those are usually inpatient programs. Very few people are strong enough to be able to continue outside, and because they will then go back to taking opioids. You've seen in some of our videos, the one in Chasing the Dragon, how individuals would stop for a while, and then everybody thought that everything was okay, and then they were laying dormant. And so those individuals were still in need of more help and counseling and remained quiet, and oftentimes ended in the loss of those individuals in their lives. You saw that in the video that we had last week. So it says here there's a high statistic of 70% or over 70% of people relapsing after they stop using methadone. So the key thing is we've got to provide methods to help individuals to abstain, and methadone is a stopgap measure, very simply put. Okay, so here's a video, and I'm not going to spend time dealing with the entire video, but matter of fact, I don't think I'm going to do the video at all, because let's see how long it is. I'm trying to remember. So this is like a 2-hour thing that you can look at on your own, and I would recommend you looking at it because I don't want to take the time for this lecture to go that long, but you might want to take a look at it. Of course, so what you saw last week kind of is a shorter version. That was an hour long, and this is 2 hours. But the more you see. So take the time to look at this if you desire to learn more, which I think you will learn quite a bit as well. And if you ever want to even save this, you can copy and paste the link and put it in an email or either on a Word document, and then you can always go back to it at a later time. But it basically is a film that breaks down in some more detail the whole issue of chasing heroin which is another drug that is very serious. And as you already know, heroin is mixed with other drugs to create the opioid issue. So you can take a look at that. So let's finally go to the 12-step and other types of programs. Now, it's common, people talked about the 12-step program when it comes to dealing with alcohol. The Alcoholics Anonymous program, 12-step program, is one of the programs that's used, and some variation of that is used in terms of dealing with individuals who are on drugs. But the key thing in these programs is that you don't pigeonhole people. You don't, it's not a, as how should I say, everybody's different, because everybody responds to treatment differently. And so the treatment methods are basically determined on a case-by-case basis using certain procedures as standard, but what helps one individual may or may not help another person. And as I already talked about, inpatient treatment is something that is almost essential and can be very long. It says long-term inpatient residential treatment may involve a stay of 6 months to a year, but this is uncommon. And so these programs help individuals to survive. Now, once again, you learned last week that even these programs don't always help an individual. I'm going to focus on one point to start out with in just a few minutes. Then there are short-term programs that are 30 days and aids in their preparation and return to the community. It depends on the strength of that individual. Some need the year and 6 months. Some can do it in 30 days, but not most, not most. Because you have to remember what has happened. When a person gets to the stage where they sometimes gotten so far off on the deep end and their whole life has changed to their associates, their daily activities center around these drugs, that they don't have any other life. And it results oftentimes in losing those individuals. And so one of the things is that people have to have other activities. It talks about skill building and some kind of recovery plan put together for that individual. It talks about group counseling, where individuals come together with other individuals to help recover. But remember, once again, within that group counseling, that each individual has a different way that they are helped. Peers, individuals who, they become friends with, they are a strong part of helping individuals. Unfortunately, sometimes peers pull you down as well. Talking about the 12 steps as AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, the support is essential. It is essential for you to have that. We call it accountability. You must have someone who you can be accountable to help you through this maze, and it is a maze. It is a maze. For opioid addiction, it says medication-assisted treatment with things like methadone, which we talked about, ibuprofen, extended release, noxatrelone play a critical role in the treatment. Again, these medications ease the symptoms of withdrawal and sickness and quicken the transition to recovery. Not many people recover. Not many people recover. So let's look at the take time now to go over the 12 steps. Now, step number 1 is essential. This is relating to Alcoholics Anonymous, but step 1 is very essential to dealing with recovery, whether it's drugs or alcohol. It says, number 1, you have to admit that you are powerless and that your life has become unimaginable. You have to believe that a power greater than yourself can restore you to sanity. Some people call it God, but the point of the matter is that it has to be something that is greater than you as an individual. Some people resort to the Zen thing, meditation, but the fact of the matter is that number 4, it says searching for moral inventory of yourself, admitting that you need help is part of the issue. You will see that coming up in just a minute. And then admitting, it says to God, but to yourself also, or some other source, if you don't believe in God, or to another human being, the exact nature of your wrongs. Remember, 2 wrongs don't make a right. You can end up rationalizing it and still have the same problem. Entirely ready to get help with removing these defects from you, and it again refers to God. This is what the 12-step program. Humbly asking God to remove your shortcomings. Make a list of persons you've harmed. In other words, focus on the fact that there are many people that you have injured: family, friends, relatives, co-workers, business associates. And, you know, it doesn't help if you're going to go say sorry, but you're still not going to follow through on it, because it'll be just the same way as we who are familiar with the cycle of abuse and domestic violence. A person will commit an act, apologize, commit a more aggressive act, apologize, and then sometimes they go to the point where they die. Well, that's the same thing that happens with using drugs, except either someone else dies or oftentimes it's the person who is hooked on the drug. And, you know, try to do whatever you can to make amends. Just keep self-examining, examining yourself. Now, listen to me. These are hard things to do because that body is calling and for a crave to get something, and you're going to have to be strong enough, and you need support from strong individuals, family, organizations, and then through prayer, meditation, or whatever it takes. And the key thing, though, is that none of these will benefit you until you admit, number 1, that you have a problem, and then go through these various steps. And what these are things that will help you to focus on something different than the drug itself. Withdrawal, we've already gone through that in terms of our previous discussions, but be aware that withdrawal is nothing to play with. It is a very serious thing, and most people don't. But you have to make a decision yourself that that's what you want to do, that you want to be able to survive the process. And so this program for AA is hard, but you're in a tough situation. It's like you've crawled into a hole and you've gotten more than halfway in there. And you can make a decision as you're going to continue to go deeper into it, or if you're going to backtrack. It's a long road to recovery, a very long road to recovery. And so it is it is not the easiest thing in the world. That's why when you have programs like the deflection, that is a Senate Bill 3023, in other jurisdictions, we had one in one of our previous lectures, that will send you to programs. It's only as good as your commitment to that program. And there's an old song that I know called "Only the Strong Survive." Well, that's the same thing that we're talking about here. Those that are strong enough to say no, and also to go through and endure the pain that's going to take place when you withdraw from these substances. You're going to have to find yourself hanging with different people. You can't hang with the same crowd, because there are things called triggers out there: music, food, associations, friends and people that can send you spiraling even if you're on the way. In other words, you can take 2 steps forward, and then one of these triggers happen, then you take 3 steps back. Then you take 2 steps forward again. Then you take 3 steps back. If you notice, each time you're ending up in the negative as opposed to the positive. You're not gaining ground, you're losing ground. And ultimately, you hit rock bottom. And so it is very, very, very important that we understand that. And so some of the people, like this young man here, Tim Ryan, and I say young man because he's younger than me, he talks about recovery is a lifetime thing, he says. He points out the fact that this is difficult, this is tough. He said, talks about how he's talking about heroin, as we were talking about in that video that I showed you about. He said heroin didn't make him a better person. It stole more than half of his life. But he says he's dedicated to every waking minute since walking out of prison to dealing hope to addicts and their families. And this book chronicles his journey into addiction, how he got in there, loss and recovery, including, as I said, losing his own son. And then as he sat in his prison cell, and you know, so so he has recovered. And so the book is entitled "From Dope to Hope," and talks about the programs that he went through. And in fact, in the book itself, he talks about one of the organizations. It's called Transformations, a Drug and Alcohol Treatment Center. And you can Google that. Their phone number is 888-677-61646. And so you can find them on the web at www.transformationstreatment.center. And this is one program that is a nationally accredited drug and alcohol treatment center, and it deals with natural and holistic protocols along with traditional medications. And so there are other programs like this. And so those are the things that you can consider. So anyway, that's about it for me. I'm going to go back to the classroom. And again, I've already said what I had to say at the beginning. Feel free to reach out to me. I hope I see many of you in other classes of mine. Oftentimes students I have in this class also are taking my Introduction to Criminal Law, which I'll be doing a lecture later tonight. And those individuals will learn even more about how the law interacts with the drugs and the treatment. So anyway, the word or phrase that I'm looking for your final lecture is drug treatment. That's it. So again, study hard for the exam. Again, I gave you some ideas about how to get ready. I will say it again, at those PowerPoints I gave you, you also want to take a look at the information that is given for the lectures that I provided to you, and then the other practice materials that are in the course. So with that, I'm going to say good night to you, and enjoy your break in between classes. And I look forward to seeing each of you or some of you in other classes. Again, if you need a reference or you want some help with getting a job or something, you know how to reach out to me. I'm always happy to help my former students. All right. And again, finally, I will say this, is that you can reach me on Facebook, as some of you are my friends already. Many of my students become friends on Facebook and communicate with me. I don't use Messenger on Facebook. I don't like that. I usually tell students to text me, or people to text me, and then let me know who you are if you send me a text. And Facebook is under Richard Wright. That's Richard and my last name Wright, space J and D. The JD is for Juris Doctor, my law degree. Okay, good night.